Alrighty. Okay, hi everybody and welcome. We're just going to go into just a few minutes, just while we get a few more people coming into the room. This is a live broadcast and a live webinar, so if you have any questions for me, Alex, or the rest of the people in here, which I will introduce any minute now, please do just pop little questions in the session chat, and I'll happily bring some of those in. But just while we're here, let's just see who we've got. We've got Chase. Hi, Chase. We've got Lee, Curtis, Daria. Hi, Daria. Paul's in, Shamil, Christian as well. So there's loads of different people which are hanging around in the session chat. So do pop a little note in there and say hi for when you're here. Because obviously we're going to be here for a little bit of time now and just sort of looking at this sort of digital transformation space. So like I said, if you've got any questions at any time, please just pop them in that session chat. But without further ado, as I've seen, most people have come into the room now. So again, once again, Stefan, hi, Toby, Christian, Matt. I can see you're all around, so do pop some messages in the chat and I'll bring them in. But let me just do a very, very quick sort of 20-second overview of what the series is all about, and I'm going to welcome all our guests. This has been, it's actually the third webinar in a series now that I've been running with Alex over in there. I don't know if he's in the top corner or the right corner, wherever he is, might be in the middle. But Alex and I have been running this webinar series now for a few weeks, and really the idea is to look at this question about digital transformation in real estate. And the opinion that we have is that following a report, and by the way, the report, there is a download link underneath your screens here, so I encourage you to download that. From that analysis that we did, there's a real discrepancy between what the academics are looking at, what venture capitalists are looking at, what consultants are thinking about this space, and ultimately, what is the discussion today, which is the property professionals' perspective on digital transformation in real estate. And so that's what this series is doing, is looking at these different silos, looking at the way that they answer these questions, and hopefully allowing you as an audience to bring those sort of discussion points together. So without further ado, I would just like to introduce the panel, and maybe I can ask the panel here to just give a quick 30 seconds about who they are, who they work for, and that'll be great. And then we can get straight into Alex answering that first question. So Laurie, would you mind taking off the first introduction here?
Sure, James. Happy to do so. My name's Laurie Rowlandson. I'm the Global Senior Vice President of a company called BGIS, which is a small global facilities management firm of just shy of about 10,000 people with presence in Australia, the UK, Canada, and the US.
Cool. Ella.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Ella Walter-Pavlo. I'm Innovation Manager at a London-based property developer called GPE.
Cool, cool. Alice. Oh, no.
Everyone's going through that 10-second intro. Okay. So, hi everyone, my name is Alice here based in Toronto. I used to run corporate innovation at Oxford Property. Oxford is an $80 billion AUM real estate investor and developer. So we've done a lot of stuff related to kind of innovation in the real estate sector. And previously I worked with an insurance company also in China, heading their corporate innovation, and also worked in venture capital with Fifth Wall and interned briefly at MetaProp. So that's the background. And I look forward to the discussion.
Cool, really varied in there as well. And finally, Gregory.
Yeah, hi all together. I'm Gregory. I'm working with Patricia, a global asset and investment manager in real estate and infrastructure, and here having a focus on innovation and tech for the last roughly 6 years.
Fantastic. And Alex, I suppose you better introduce yourself really here.
Yeah, so I'm Alex Wiffen, MD at Cherry Pick People. We specialise in search and selection for the real estate sector, and particularly focusing on PropTech and innovation sort of roles. Very passionate about sort of getting involved in this digital transformation that the sector's going through, and helping facilitate that with the getting the right people in the right places. So yeah, thanks for getting us all involved, James.
Cool. And so, well, let's just look through again. So Stuart, I see you've joined. Stefan, hey Stefan. Thomas, Dominique's in again, Christian, Somya, Max, Dillian, there's a whole load of people. Even Mr. Slumbers has dropped by to say hello. So if you've got any questions or queries, do just stick them in the session chat. We'd love to put them across to the audience. This is a live webinar for all of you who've joined us. So as I said, please pop some questions in. I'll really happily bring them in. And especially what's quite interesting here is we've got, two Canadians, a German, Ella from the UK, obviously Alex and myself are in the UK as well. So this is a real global perspective from those property professionals around that digital transformation piece. So I hope this will be a really interesting webinar for you. So Alex, do you want to just fire away with that sort of first common ground question that we always lead in with here?
Yeah, of course. So what I'd love to know from everyone involved is, from a perspective of someone working directly in the real estate industry, how do you feel it's evolving in terms of digital transformation? Where do you see it at the moment, and where do you see it going next?
Laurie, you're going to pick on first, Alex. Who are you going to pick?
Laurie, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I represent the voice of the occupier of real estate. And I'll tell you, it's actually quite confusing right now. And I think there was maybe confusion before, but it's accelerated. They want employees back in the office. Employees, there's obviously some backlash. Depending on the country, there's more presence than others, but generally it's still not meeting expectations. So it's creating a bit of a cooling effect on investment in technology right now, except for really understanding utilization, which has become one of the main instruments for operational management, program management in the site, not just rationalizing real estate, but really understanding, okay, we've invited people back, they're not coming back. How can we engage and animate and use technology to really drive better collaboration and engagement with employees? So still a lot of question marks and a lot of people in the spin zone, quite frankly.
What do you mean by spin zone, Laurie?
They're indecisive. They're not quite sure what steps to make next. They've invited people back. They can't get them back. A lot of this is dependent on a much closer relationship with HR and some of the amenities that are necessary to support them. So it's not just a real estate decision. Never before have we ever needed to go arm in arm with our decisions than HR. And that includes technology amenities. People are coming into the office to do ideation and celebration and innovation. So meeting room amenities, technologies that make sure that those hybrid meetings are not have and have not. So a lot of meeting room technologies are actually the frontier people are investing in, are tending to be what they're trying to do to create a better amenity at the office. And second, make sure that there's no disparity between people that are in the office and are not in the office. So the level of technology that they're using to do communications enables all of that.
Fantastic. I see you nodding a lot there, Ella, as Laurie was sort of going through that. What would you have to add to that?
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear the occupier perspective. I think from my side, working in innovation in real estate, what I've been really encouraged to see the last year or so is more and more real estate companies, more and more peers in the industry are actually hiring for specific roles in innovation or digital transformation, however they want to term it. So I think that's really encouraging for the kind of wider adoption at scale, I guess, of these technologies. And I think from my perspective, it's not, that might be kind of scary because you think, oh, other real estate companies are catching up to us and there might be more competition. But I really see it as a good thing because it means that the tech companies that we are working with are going to have more and more clients, and then their products are going to get better and better. So I think, for the industry as a whole, it's a real positive to have more people in these specific roles focusing on innovation and technology.
Excellent. Gregory, I mean, you've got a slightly different angle on it as an investment manager. What's your take?
Well, let me maybe first take the point Laurie made in the beginning of the slowdown. Actually, my perception is the same, that it's all like slowing a bit down. within the adoption and the collaboration. So you had the first wave with the PropTechs kicking in a couple of years ago, obviously way later in continental Europe than in North America. The people like adopted the technologies, they piloted, implemented, and really they started to form an ecosystem. And now I feel it's really getting a bit, less adoption at the moment. Well, why? The question is pretty valid, I think, and my easy answer is it's just bloody hard to innovate. It's so difficult, to overcome old behaviors, to change things, to break with traditions, and to be ready to fail. I think that's one of the most important things, and the industry is not there yet, I believe. I guess we will discuss about that later on as well. And then also we have the market phase. Well, the easiest thing in a market phase like that is to cut tech and innovation budget. I believe it's the worst thing you can do. And my colleagues here in the panel, I sure believe the same, but it's the easiest thing to do, to cut resources, to cut budget. But actually, I don't want to be too pessimistic. There's so many good reasons to be optimistic. First of all, innovation is not a linear process. So there is often a stagnation, and then you have a leap forward. Then you have the pressure from the outside, from the politics, from the society to do something with ESG, for example. So I guess good reasons to be optimistic, but it always, James will already know at this point, from my point of view, it's always too slow. You can always have more speed, and it would be better to execute way quicker.
And I might just add, by the way, Gregory, that you might have a very biased perspective that technology and innovation budget should not be cut. It's a very biased perspective.
You think so?
Just finishing on that. Sorry, Alex, you go for it.
I was going to say it came up in the report that we did that there was, the fact that a lot of property businesses are very profitable as they are at the moment, and why adopt? But you've seen that in many other industries that have gone through that sort of digital transformation. Maybe someone really needs to come along to force the change, or COVID obviously drove tech when we were forced into that sort of thing. Maybe there's an element of being forced into it by a disruptor or outside forces that, if you're already profitable and running a profitable business, that needs to happen. Alice, what do you think?
You know what? I have a really nerdy answer for everyone. And at the same time, I definitely echo with coming to recession, a lot of the budget was cut in the innovation front, directly, because, when you're just, fighting for survival, right? Why innovate? You're just okay, let's just do business as usual. And then when things gets better, and then that's when I innovate again. I think, we see a lot of hype because of COVID. Right? I think real estate industry for the first time, they're freaking out because everyone is not coming to the office, remote working seems to be working. So they need to innovate. They need to come up with ways to bring people back. So this is how I think about it, as kind of someone who kind of wanted to implement a lot of technologies in the buildings. So I think right now, real estate realized the biggest obstacles is not about technology or point solutions itself. There's tons of point solutions. Either it's occupancy sensors, I don't know, health and wellness, related, they test how good your air quality is, or even just simple things you can have in the office. They're just point solutions. Point solutions doesn't mean anything unless, you have a good foundational infrastructure. So which means the building have to be smart from the get-go for this to become even, interesting enough, because else you can have all the fancy solutions, but then there's no fundamental structure to support it. I think, I really like WireScore in a lot of ways. They help you do it what they call at least smart assessment. So you have to understand how smart your building really is. Without understanding, if you have the foundational infrastructure, no matter how many point solutions you kind of put in there, it's just it just tells my occupancy sensor, like, so what? It doesn't really trigger another thing. So it's a purely cost for you. And then I think a lot of asset managers or like operator to realize that, like, they're just purely spending the money and there's nothing really in return. So there's no ROI on what they're spending on their tech expenses. The second thing is what I call like a platform solutions. So right now we haven't really seen anyone who's a really good integrator. Think about it. You have all the data. So what? They're siloed. They're just point solutions. So you need like a platform at least to integrate all of them, and then for them to talk to each other to say, okay, this much occupancy, occupancy level means, what it means to my air quality, what it means to my booking, what it means to my energy usage. Like, you need something there to like make sure the data is talking. And unfortunately, we haven't really seen something or like a solution that is becoming like, a winner in the space that for everyone to be comfortable to say, okay, by using this integrator, we know the data can talk to each other. So right now it's just very siloed. And like I said, there's no ROI, real ROI on the tech expenses. So I think, at the end of the day, real estate realize like, they're not going to spend just like little bit of money everywhere. They probably need to start by investing in the foundational layer, which is like, their building system, things like that. Like that is maybe, what's really needed. So it's a capital expenditure. It's not an operating expenses end of the day.
I think that is an incredibly good summary of the challenges of digital transformation, Alice, and not at all nerdy, as you put it at the start. I'm just interested, Laurie, I know you're quite strong on some of the points that Alice has mentioned in there. Have you got any sort of comeback on some of the aspects that she's mentioned, and in terms of those sort of short-term challenges in particular that we're facing?
I love what she said. I almost wanted to stand up and start cheering. And just to build on that, I think that not only integration, so you don't have data but no insight. It's translating it with the same data dictionary so that you can compare things. But also, I think that the ROI is inhibited if you don't also connect the insight into downstream processes. So I see so many organizations stop at the dashboard, so what? And they're not even always good at the ahas, translating the data into ahas. It looks like a beautiful pie graph or a bar graph or a scatter graph or whatever, but it's taking it into action is really where you get the ROI and the impetus for funding in the budget. So in the FM industry, we look at all of that technology as a way to enable our downstream processes and how we take action. And if you do that in isolation, thematically, IT and FM as independent channels, you're really going to suboptimize the value proposition. So don't have utilization sensors unless you're using that to manage, Legionella routines or consolidate people into certain floors and manage your heating and cooling, inform your janitorial routines. It's an interconnected ecosystem enabled by data downstream.
Gregory, you shut your eyes and nodded at one point there, which I'm sort of assuming. Ellen nodded but didn't close eyes. You closed eyes and nodded, which I think is like a heightened level of agreement. Do you think Laurie had some good points on that?
No, absolutely. I think also what is not really considered is the whole value chain as such. So from the facility manager over to property asset and fund management, you have so many frictions in that, and if that's not going like hand in hand, you will like Alice said, get more and more silos. You will not be able to seize all the potential and the synergies as possible in the end. And that's one of the biggest opportunities with the digital transformation and innovation to break up these silos in the end.
I'm going to bring in, I suppose, a second question now, which hopefully neatly wraps up what you said. Are you four familiar with the term the ambidextrous organization? Okay, so the ambidextrous organization is, I think, where we are currently situated within the real estate market, where we've got organizations where you're both battling with the short-term business model and the long-term perspectives of having to innovate, and sustainable innovation at that, which means that you're having to be ambidextrous because you're having to deal with both factors at the same time. And as a consequence, you've got, all four of you are battling that sort of, how do we protect the existing model whilst being forward-thinking and innovative about where the sort of the business is going in the future? And there's a lot of literature around being able to exploit or explore. And I think, again, there are big challenges of leadership within the real estate industry, which is we're trying to exploit the business model success that we've had over the years. And at the same time, with you four here, exploring where do we go with it all. And there is a big conflict there, I feel. And there's a big challenge around the jobs that you're trying to do and keeping the day-to-day work of the business going. Do you feel that in that overview I've just given, do you feel that that's exactly where the real estate industry is, which is we're having to become an ambidextrous organization to look to the future, but also protect where we are now? And do you feel that we're coping with it very well? Probably a difficult one. Who wants to take that off?
I can start with some thoughts if you want.
Yeah, go on, Anna.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, and to, I guess, putting that terminology, that ambidextrous organization, is a great way to articulate it. I think that's definitely where we're at, particularly with sustainability challenges in the future. We're all, I think pretty much all the countries that we're in are going to have changes in legislation over the next few years, and that there's a lot to be done there, where it's planning for a future that's going to look quite different. I think in terms of addressing those challenges in a sort of innovation team capacity, what we've often talk about in our team is it's a new function, it's a new part of the organization. We really need to kind of prove the value of the team and the work that we do. So we need to have some quick wins and address some kind of like immediate problems for those short-term business problems that the teams throughout the business are facing, in order to get the kind of legitimacy to tackle some of those longer-term problems and challenges. So I guess for example, like a really long, or a project that took a really long time for us, was like getting all our data in order and restructuring our data warehouse with exactly what the team was talking about just now, in terms of piecing together all those different silo solutions, right? Which was a really big project and took a lot of time. But we couldn't come in, day one as the innovation team and say we need to do this project and we need quite a lot of resource in order to do it. So we had to tackle smaller things first and prove the value of technology to the business, which is going to have people in it who are skeptical about technology.
I think I can add in, because I had perspective from two sides. So when I was at VC, a fifth wall, we worked on a few kind of corporate innovation projects with our LPs. So the angle was really different. And when I started work at Oxford, or with Pina, and how we kind of dive into corporate innovation, because at fifth wall is super top down. You literally look into the industry and see what is up and coming. Back in the days when it was 2017, 2018, it's all about co-working, right? All the real estate, all office operators are thinking about their co-working strategy. And then basically, this is almost the trend that's going on, and how real estate companies need to think about it. So you're really jumping on a trend. So coming to the company, and then what I realized is it really depends on the people who are leading different functions, how innovative they are, versus you think about this as the most urgent innovation need. So I just thought it's very interesting, because obviously a lot of people get it, and then it's just so easy to work with them. And what Ella was saying is quick wins. But sometimes you see something very obvious and you can quickly add a value, but you realize it's been a lot of time trying to persuade the stakeholders to trust in whatever you wanted to do, or some products, or amazing kind of innovation ideas you found. So what I found very interesting.
Alex, can I just because I think it's really important to pick up on certain key points like that, and you'll excuse me on that. You talked about the word trust. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have when we're running ambidextrous organizations, and this is a direct link to the report that was written, Cherry Pick were involved. If anyone's watching this, there's a little download link underneath here. And one of the biggest aspects, I think, around trust is that something like, I think it's 56% of people in innovation roles have been in those roles for less than 2 years. And invariably, they're not even from the sector. That was a lot of the findings that we found. So how can the leaders who are under threat, let's be honest, they're really under threat here because they've got to look after the organization today and be forward thinking enough to risk their personal and their business reputation on challenging the business status quo to move it forward a little bit? How can they trust people like you? And I know it's probably a flippant answer, which is, well, they wouldn't have employed us in the first place. But genuinely, how can they trust you to deliver on those innovation mindsets, thoughts, and strategies when they're unfamiliar with it?
It's a great question. First of all, if I'm like like a real estate VP or SVP and they're like 50s, 60s, I wouldn't trust 30-year-old Asian girl like me, right? Like, what do you know about real estate? But unfortunately, I happen to know a little bit about PropTech because, first of all, I work in real estate. So I actually know the physical assets, done through a lot of kind of building walkthroughs, or underwriting, understand the fundamental lines, and then also worked in, innovation. So I think, it's kind of I just happen to have this mix of experience, but I agree with you. I actually think it is for the innovation person to understand real estate. I think that is the biggest challenge. A lot of the innovation people you bring into a real estate company, they don't really understand real estate that much. So I really think you should spend at least one solid year to understand the assets. Go to the property, see how the property works. That was such an important, part for the innovation. You can't really just be thinking about oh, this is what's going on in ESG. Obviously everyone knows about that. You don't need to teach an innovation person what is trendy. But I think it's actually the fact we need to understand the assets. We need to understand what the pain points for the operators. And even you just talk to security guard to say, okay, what are pain points right now? What do you see, right? For example, one thing I've never think I would heard about is some security guard complaining they can't really hire because everything is on Workday, and then you're expecting a Workday to a security guard to apply through Workday. I was I don't know if that's an innovation challenge, but you know what, sure. So things like that, I feel it's so important for us to just become relevant for the industry, and then I think building trust is huge for sure. But I do think, at the same time for the real estate industry, they need to uptrain their executive as well. So I think, right now there is a part of lacking is for innovation people, we don't understand real estate as much as the real estate people. But at the same time, maybe the real estate executive, they need to uptrain themselves in terms where the innovation is at, where some of the fun or interesting ideas are. So what we have been at least at Oxford, what I've been doing is every month I try to cover a new sector, residential. Okay, these are the interesting ideas in residential. I brought in some startups just to speak with us about new models, and then next week probably industrial. I don't think there's anything to uptrain them, but at least get them in front of ideas so they know what is going on in the industry, versus I think every time you meet with a new executive, you have to kind of explain what this PropTech is, what is innovation is, and then spending a lot of time. So I think, getting people curious, or even just make sure they're in front of a lot of interesting ideas is probably the number one, I feel responsibility for anyone who's really in innovation, or at least you get people to want it to work for you. Instead of I go to you, James, I really want to work with you on this idea. You come to me, it's hey, I saw this in your panel, really liked it. Is it a way we can get engaged? I've seen that. And then that's when I realized, you know what? That's probably something that's going to work. It's almost more like a PR versus a knowledge-based kind of push. So I just thought
on that topic of the sort of the people driving the innovation, and whether it's a tech person who needs to learn real estate, or is it a real estate person that needs to skill up? I mean, that was something that came up in our report. And actually, Laurie, I watched one of your videos with Deb Noller, and that was a topic that came up with that. So I would really be interested to get an understanding what you feel about sort of the importance of talent in the digital transformation of the sector. You know, what is the industry looking for? You know, part of the report that we did, we found that only 49% of the people in innovation roles were hired for innovation. So, you know, 51% were hired for something else entirely and were doing it off the side of their desk or whatever. So, you know, as we start to go through this, what do you think the industry, you know, is looking for in that talent? How important is that?
I'll answer this question, but I want to be the contrarian on that ambidextrous question in a moment too. So I think the industry needs to better look at transferable skills, and we do get fixated on what code you know, can you write Python, or, you know, we do tend to get very fixated on the tech, but as we know, tech has a shelf life, and problem solving skills, relationship management skills, the ability to understand and synthesize a problem will take us forward. Within 10 years, we're going to be using technology that hasn't been invented yet. So we really need to make sure that we are hiring people that are going to withstand the storm and constantly reinvent. And that is a bit of a paradigm shift for us. That's interpersonal skills. Of course, need to understand the tech stuff, but more and more tech leaders are really going to have strong off the chart problem influence, you know, integration, transformation, how to drive things forward out of the spin zone. It's not good enough to be technically smart anymore. Influence and problem solving are actually going to be more important.
Go on, Laurie, be the contrarian.
James, I love you, but I got to be the contrarian on your ambidextrous point.
Good.
Okay.
Do you know what the worst thing in the world is? Being on a panel and everyone goes, I agree. That's a great point. How wonderful. I'd never thought of that before. Come on, be the contrarian. Okay. Go for it.
So I really don't think that those points of what you're talking about is meeting short-term needs and then innovating for the future. They absolutely cannot be mutually exclusive. They cannot be in opposition if we are going to survive. They must be leveraged. And as the sponsor of innovation for our company, so I work with engineers. That's pretty interesting. They love action logs. They're really detailed, you know, next steps. The company I work for has doubled 4 times in 10 years. So they don't, between the engineering sort of culture and the pace of growth, we don't have a lot of patience for long-term thinking and plan. Like a 5-year plan is almost a joke for us. So we tend to, as a culture, make shorter bursts of decisions. So as the sponsor, there's no way I'm going to change the culture of the company. I'm not going to educate my boss to work differently. It is the way that it is. Instead of fighting it, leverage it. And that's what I've done. So I do a lot of try, show, and scale. And I often try to implement and test innovations that will move the needle within this fiscal year, and looking at capital budgets and things like that, that get whatever I need 80% funded and then just top it up a little bit. So it absolutely has to be aligned with short-term budgets, plans. And then I would say once you, engineers, and again, I love engineers. My dad was an engineer. I'm not being salacious, but engineers feel better with seeing outcomes. So if you do that try, show, and scale and test, they see the outcome, and that's a better way to get them on board and scale. And, you know, the expectation overall, I'll say, the last thing I'll say, the expectation of innovation isn't going to change whether we have a budget or not. We have to find a way. So whatever limitations we have within the scope of what we're working on, we have to go forward. And the best way to do that is pilot, you know, try, show, scale. Like I said, we got to take it out of innovation theater. People are not going to fund that. They're not going to fund a big idea. Get them to try something and increment and evolve.
That was a nice little statement. And I hate to admit this, Laurie, I'm just writing a little note to Rob Stark, who put a little message in the session chat. And I'm just going to tell you that he said he completely agreed with you, which I don't like. Rob, you're meant to disagree at this point. Don't celebrate too much, because I'm going to come back at you, which is, and I hate to say, I am going to agree, but I'm just going to make a point, which is what I think you've done is you've been very clever, which is I can't remember the term you used, but you've doubled down on the fact that you're not going to change the culture of the organization, and you're going to use that in order to facilitate the innovation that you're going to put in. But I think my point about the ambidextrous organization is more that when you look at it, and I think, Alice, you used the term at Fifth Wall of being a very top-down organization. When you have very top-down organizations and not very flat structures, you run the risk of a mentality of the very top of the organizations feeling intimidated and very mindful of having to look short and long term. And if they don't realize there can be alignment, that's when the problem comes in. So would you accept that as a piecemeal in there, Laurie, that you may have found a way of working with your company on this, but a lot of, I think, the problems that we have in real estate is the misunderstanding that, Alice, you mentioned is very, very present. And as a consequence, they don't see how they can align short-term, what they would call exploitative techniques, as in maximize the assets that we've got now, while exploring all of the future potential innovation that we can bring in. That's where I think the problem is. Mentalities of leaders that don't understand it can be aligned.
I think it's just because like innovation takes time. So unless it's like a really top-down kind of commitment, like you're not going to see this, like, you know, like it's like if someone is expected to see like a quick win, which means like an ROI return within 1 year, like I don't think they're mostly likely going to see it. And if they want to kill it because they don't see something in 1 year, they're mostly likely going to kill it. So I agree with like a top-down approach in a way, just because, you know, you just give some project more time. Like, it's just, you know, you need the time to prove it. And sometimes it's really dependent on market conditions. Like, for example, co-working, you know, if they implement it in like, you know, beginning of 2020, like, you know, bad luck, right? It's like, it's probably not going to work. But if you think about it, you know, if it's a few years ago or even you started right now, it's like, that's exactly the same, you know, the right thing to do, like being flexible, like providing that flex space. So it's just like a tricky job. Like I would say, like, you know, I think that's what I learned as well. It's just like, you know, knowing innovation is not enough, but it's really just building the trust. Like, you know, someone like Laurie, who's like really senior in the organization, have enough kind of influence and then network, I think is someone we kind of all look up to. Just like, you know, hopefully we get there. Someone trusts us, you know, to give us some budget, and then we can work on some cool things.
Gregory, based on what we've already talked about here, the ambidextrous organization and the top-down leadership, what are your thoughts on what Ella, Alice, and Laurie have mentioned? It's been quite a topical conversation so far on that instance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I could like touch on many of the points. But well, first of all, I think it's important like to find the balance between the what I call like the incremental improvements with innovation and digitization. So the short-term perspective, but nevertheless, I think we definitely still need to have the more long-term perspective, and that's pretty difficult to align with the short-term ones, and also to really discuss with the people. So I'm not sure. I think, Alice, you said that as the main task for a person working in innovation is showing things to the organization, trying to make them curious. I'm not entirely sure whether I would agree on that, because it's so difficult. If the people are really stuck in the daily business, they are really having their problems, their challenges, they which are often so far away from real innovation, and it's just like getting the data or having frictions. And so I'm not sure whether the appetite of the people is so big to be curious about like great ideas, which might be valuable like in a couple of years' time.
So can I just add a little bit to that? I think, you know, innovation and technology is different. I think, you know, if you're talking about the operations, that's technology, that's an IT thing. That's automation, that's all like, you know, integration. I think for innovation, they have to be curious or interesting in whatever, you know, the idea we're implementing. If it's an automating or like they're working with the data, I think it's on the IT layer. It's not really, you know, in my perspective, it's not in the innovation tier. It's really, you know, it's like very foundational tech layer you're building with that team. So you know, fortunately and unfortunately, like, that's not a lot of what I have done. But then I think, as someone who's like try to be a bit more innovative, or like at least like present some ideas, what I would do is just make sure I know what the key pain points is, and make sure the ideas I bring in matches with what they want. So it's not like I just randomly select someone, but then I actually know, how I match the pain points with some like cool ideas. But I think what you talked about the data automation, I think that really stays with it, like IT and tech layer a lot. Yeah.
I'd like to get back to some of the points that you raised earlier about the top-down sort of focus and cultural piece. I mean, obviously that needs to be in place. So do you think we have the right type of leaders in place at the moment, to drive this digital transformation? And what sort of talent is needed to support them? Ella, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think firstly, for me, top down and bottom up are always going to be equally important in the innovation and technology journey, because you definitely need the direction from senior leaders to be there for the business, and honestly also from a budget perspective as well. But I think you really need support throughout all different layers of the organization, because at the end of the day, the people adopting the technology are probably going to, the CEO is probably not going to use these software platforms on a daily basis, right? So you really need that buy-in from all levels. I think in terms of leadership skill set and to kind of prioritize and address these things, I mean, it varies a lot, right? But I think we're getting to, I guess, in the industry as a whole, I'm seeing a lot of leaders start talking about it more and knowing that it's something they need to prioritize, which is kind of the first step. And you can't expect somebody, depending what background they're coming from, to become an expert overnight. So I think the first thing is, the important thing at the moment is that people know that it's something they need to prioritize, invest in, hire experts for, etc.
Do you think it's better? Do you think it's better that we take somebody, with a real estate experience and teach them how to, innovate and the digital tech side of things, or is it better to get someone from a tech background and educate them in real estate?
It depends on the person. I mean, honestly, it could work really well from both ways, I think. But I think somebody else was mentioning earlier, I think the key thing is about knowing how to approach problems, knowing how to do the stakeholder engagement. Those are really the key skills, and it could come from either background for sure.
Gregory, what about how do you feel about that? Obviously, in terms of the talent and where they should come from. Is it tech, or educated in real estate, or someone from a real estate background educated in tech? What are your feelings?
Is it one for me? Sorry, I didn't catch it.
Yeah, that was for you, Greg. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Happy to. Well, actually, I think the pure education, talking about like courses and studies, is less important these days. So frankly speaking, real estate that's not a rocket science, and also tech to some extent is not. So if you are curious, if you are really willing to learn, you can simply learn. So no matter whether you're a real estate person, you want to be innovative, you can learn that, and basically vice versa. So it's way more important thinking about the mindset. So really being curious, being open, embracing also the insecurity of the things, and being ready to change things. So I think that's way more important than just thinking about, okay, this person is good in business, this one in real estate, and that's someone who is great in coding. It's all very helpful, but in the end, we will definitely need more than just that.
Okay, I'm going to just come in here if that's all right. I think there's been some really interesting points there raised about leadership and the future of leadership, and I think the challenge that we've all got in this little group is, Alice, with the exception of you, obviously, because I know you're transitioning at the minute in terms of a new role, but I am pretty sure all three of the others in here are all working with relatively forward-thinking leaders who are very supportive in the efforts that you're all putting together and giving you the flexibility and relative flexibility to experiment and look both at short and long term. And I think Ella just referenced, I mean, Eddie's just mentioned in the comments about the amazing work you've done at GPE, and there is actually an interview that we did where we talk about, you know, what you've done at GPE with James as well. And obviously, Laurie, we've had that talk, and Gregory, we've had that talk about all of the work that you're doing from an innovation standpoint. So I'll put some links in later on because there's some really interesting case studies in there. Jeff has made a comment here, which I'm just going to bring in. So what I see is a big push to lots of technology, but organizations need to really take material steps to the data analytics and business intelligence to see if promise equals the actual results. Otherwise, lots of these ideas will flame out because the juice isn't worth the squeeze, which I've never heard that expression before. But so that's a really interesting point. And if there's any other questions that you've got from any of the people that are watching, please just drop them in the comments there. And I'm going to go back a step because sort of on a slight tangent here from the generalistic question that we've had, and I'm going to go back to a point earlier on, which was very early on in this conversation, which was around sort of the return to office debate. You started it, Laurie, and then Ella, you sort of pitched in with your thing. But Anthony Slumbers has come in with a question in terms of looking at this debate about incremental versus what's known as radical innovation. And his statement starts with, our offices are pretty empty and likely to stay that way, yet the industry seems to believe it still has product market fit. I think there's been some really interesting debates and discussions about this exact argument at the moment, with huge property funds coming over from America, which is converting offices into housing at the moment, as an example. But his question is, don't we need something more fundamental than incremental innovation? So I want to put that, perhaps, Gregory, you might start. You're nodding. This is ridiculous that we're going with nodding as a sort of an idea of who's going to answer the question. But Gregory, do you want to start that? So do we need something more fundamental than incremental, gradual innovation in our industry? Does someone really need to upset the mode?
Yeah, well, as I was nodding, obviously, from my point of view, the answer is yes. So yeah. I definitely think so. So incremental innovation is great. So because with that, you can definitely build the trust we were just talking about. But the state of the industry, with a very poor state of digitization, with all the frictions in the management chain, really lacks the overarching vision of how to reshape that. So that's one of the things we can only have can only tackle with the greater vision, because I don't think we can break it up with incremental innovation. And also there's, from my point of view, necessary to really rethink how we consider the tenant. So the tenant is really the customer, thinking about him with a customer, from a customer journey point of view. Here, this one you can maybe tackle with incremental innovation, but in the end, having the overarching vision and then deriving the steps might be way more fruitful here, I believe.
Okay. Anybody else in terms of that innovation discussion that we've got?
You know, I was the one that brought up incremental innovation, and I think that has a time and a place, but I agree with whoever said that we do need some radical change, and it's coming quickly, because there is such a disparity. We've gone through so much change that I don't think we weren't going back to the way we were. So I do think we need some radicalization. The question is, who's always going to be first? So I'm almost thinking we need like an Adam Newman to kind of persona to come up with, instead of we work, a we live, where we have these work, live, play kind of neighborhoods. There's always got to be somebody first that does it, and then everybody wants to catch up. Kind of like what Google did when they did their initial transformation of the office, and it sort of sets the bar for us. But many organizations, to somebody's earlier point, really have a low appetite for big radical transformation. It often comes from a disruptor in the industry on the outside, and the rest of us catch up. So I think incremental innovation is a time and a place, But radical innovation, I think, is we've got all the right conditions for it. So somebody's going to come in with a disruptive offering.
Okay, I'm going to actually, Ella, I can see you're about to come in on that, but I'm going to move on from that, because I think one of the comments is absolutely right on this, which is we have to remember, and this is about digital transformation. Innovation actually is only one element of innovation, you know, and it speaks to a lot more. And we've already talked. I know we talked about data already, because that's a massive component of transformation. Alex, you brought in the talent discussion, and that is very much around that sort of transformation piece as well. One of the things we haven't really touched on is culture, and this is just genuinely just a yes or no answer from all four of you. Have we got the right culture in the real estate industry for digital transformation? Ella?
In the industry as a whole?
Yeah,
no.
as a whole. I know what the answer is. I just want to hear it. Have we got the right culture in the industry to do a digital transformation journey? Sorry, what was that?
That's a no. No, in the industry.
Okay, right. Gregory, have we got the right culture? Yes or no?
No, definitely not at the moment.
Alice, have we got the right culture?
You know what? I worked at Oxford. I think I really think I was very fortunate to work in an organization like Oxford, where you can find a lot of open-minded people and leaders. So I think really fortunate being working with the organization in the past 2 years, and you know, sourcing some fun ideas, especially like, you know, is also all asset types related. So at least like, I think the organization I stayed in, you know, we're pretty positive. And then as an industry, I think, it really tiers like class A operator, class B, class C, I think is very different.
And that's a very valuable, more than a yes, no answer. I think that's a very valid point. Laurie, yes or no culture? Have we got it right yet?
Clearly, no.
No. Jorge, you agree with us as well. Hi, Jorge, I haven't seen you for a while. Stuart says, thank you, fantastic discussions. He's had to drop. I just want to bring in a question from Rafat, who's actually tuning in here from Taiwan. It comes back actually, Alex, quickly to your talent point here. He says, according to you, which are the priorities in terms of skills and education profile that we need most to accelerate this move, this digital transformation move? Business analysts, data scientists, PropTech project managers, what would be your priorities in that skill and education play? Alice, have you got a thought? Do you want to kick us off on that? What would you say is the skill and education priority that we should have? Or rather, the leaders should have at this moment? Who should they be bringing into their organizations?
If I'm just like, hiring someone as my associate, I would hire someone who probably know real estate more than tech, because I feel like tech, I already know the solutions. So it's probably complementary to like, my skill set as well. Like, I feel like I can uptrain this person in terms of the prop tech ideas, but I would really appreciate someone actually has been, had the operating experience. So,
yep.
Know the offices like inside out, and then they understand like, the operator pain points. So.
Okay, so real estate knowledgeable futurists. Gregory, what are your thoughts on this in terms of your hiring? Who should the leaders be hiring at the moment?
Well, actually, I think it's less about hiring or bringing in new people. I would rather focus on the people who are already there and on the culture which is prevalent in the company. So I'd rather try to educate. Always sounds a bit like maybe stupid also, but it's really, really authentically showing that it's important to change, that the innovation is important, and that from the leadership, I think, and then trickling it down into the organization, I think that's even more important than the pure hiring play.
Fair enough. Laurie, anything else? Ella, from there, who would you hire?
I like farming people out of the data center world, because they really understand the interdependencies of IT and real estate. They work in complex and sophisticated environments. They have advanced problem solving skills, risk management skills, and everything else is a watered down version of that when you think about it. All buildings are becoming critical environments. So that's one of my favorite places to farm people.
All buildings are becoming critical environments, did I pick up there?
Yes. with the technologies that are being layered into them. Yes.
I like that a lot. Ella, finally on that, what do you think?
I think for hiring, for me, it would be really important to have a real mix of backgrounds and skill sets. So I think, someone from real estate, someone from tech, someone from tech consulting, tends to bring a really valuable perspective as well. So it's really, important to have them.
It's a really difficult question, right? And Rafa, that was really really brilliant question to bring in. And Rob Stark has actually made a comment that soft skills and people skills are actually invaluable, which arguably links to what you've mentioned there, Gregory, about culture being a number one challenge. And I'm a bit torn, if I'm brutally honest, in terms of that data point. And it brings me back to the conversation I had with Jim Whalen from Boston Properties. And he said it took them 4 years to work out their data strategy from the very start, when they had no idea the data they were collecting, storing, or producing from their buildings. And I'm very mindful of data, absolutely, to bring on what you said, Laurie, is a foundation stone of understanding. But at the same time, your organization is going to go through a massive people shift, culture shift, attitude shift, forward thinking shift, educational shift, and you need people to really bring people along the journey. So I'm stuck between the very prosaic data question and the people one. I think we've got a couple more minutes. Have you got one more question, Alex, to bring in before we let these poor people disappear off into the ether? Oh, you've done what Alice did earlier.
Had to be done. So, one final question. You've got 30 seconds each. It's a bit of a challenging one to answer, to be fair. But Amara's law, if you're familiar with it, suggests that we overestimate change in the short term and underestimate change in the long term. So I would like 30 seconds on your predictions for 5 years' time and 50 years' time. What will the state of the real estate market, real estate industry look like in terms of digital transformation? Shall I
get a stop clock going on this one?
Yeah.
Hang on. I'm going to get 30 seconds. Who are you going to nominate to go first on this? Because that's a really cruel, at the end of an hour of conversing about particular topics, and we got 30 seconds. So 5 years and 50 years prediction on the industry. I've got a timer on at the minute. Who's going to go first? Who's going to take?
Laurie's first with the next person along the thing. So Laurie, give us your predictions, please.
Laurie, ready? Go.
I'm keeping a close eye on 3D printing and metaverse. I really think that especially the metaverse is going to knock us on our you-know-whats, because it's way more compelling than in real life. And not to say that it's the right thing to do, but it will be highly addictive. And it will be highly productive and probably even more interesting and engaging than in person. And 3D printing, interesting to be able to augment supply chain shortages.
Brilliant.
Oh my word, that was very good. That was very, very good. Although if I could be very critical, I think you only answered the 50-year question, not the 5-year question. So not that I'm sort of splitting hairs here at all. Alex, who are you going to nominate second for this 5 and 50-year prediction of what we're overestimating and underestimating?
Ella, you're up next.
Ella, you ready?
I'm ready.
Go.
So 5 years, I would say that in a tougher macro environment going into a recession, we're going to see a lot of real estate companies deprioritize innovation. We're going to see a big difference between the ones that continue and the ones that don't. And I believe that the ones that continue working on innovation and digital transformation are going to come out in a better position after 50 years' time. I think 50 years' time, very hard to say. The technology will probably look quite different. But I think there will be big progress on massive industry problems that need a lot of collaboration, like things like materials, passports, circular economy.
Very good. Very good. Okay, who's next?
Alice, you're up next.
Ready, Alice? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Within 5 years, I think data automation. I think a lot of what we do in real estate, it can be automated, and then you will see more of the daily work being automated, and then it's going to save a lot of time. I think that's where really the efficiency drive is going to be. And unfortunately, that's not really innovation, but I think, it's more on the tech end. 50 years, I'm really hoping to see what the impact of autonomous vehicles is going to bring to the real estate world, especially how we work, play, and live. And then I think, it's going to be very integrated. And then I'm just really excited to be personally being able to be an AV. So.
Oh, that was well timed. That was well timed. That was well timed. Right. And does that mean Gregory's left? All right. Ready, Greg? Ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm like Ella. I'm less optimistic on like the 2 to 5 year horizon. We will have some incremental innovation and some small improvements, but not more. Talking about 50 years, the industry will look completely different with all the technologies already mentioned. But definitely we will have a customer journey for the tenants. We will have a completely different management chain of real estate. We have transparency within the data and the markets. And we will also have more flexibility when it comes to the property and to the service providers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. He's done it.
I've just done it. I was about to congratulate people for the most succinct answers I think I've ever received on that question. And in the audience, they're basically saying that they want all the old archaic business models to blow up. I don't know if that's in 5 years or 50 years, but that gives us a bit of an idea. And by the way, just for everybody watching, Laurie quite rightly said that it was in the next 5 years with 3D printing and the metaverse came in. And thanks for that, Laurie, for talking about that. And I have to laugh, Laurie, because my good friend Mr. Anthony Slumbers in the comments just went no about your metaverse point. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. Quite interestingly, we had Jeff has come in and said that in the 5 years, much greater focus on resident and tenant experience. 50 years, smart cities that are data driven. Rob Stark has come in and just said, climate, anyone? We didn't even mention the climate challenges that we have as a big responsibility within our sector. And Rob, I think that is absolutely 100% bang on. And I think that is most definitely a 5-year discussion, but it's a 5-year discussion, sadly, to change the mentality, not necessarily the action that we also badly need within our industry. So that's going to be something definitely to watch. So anyway, everybody who is watching this, thank you ever so much for all of the comments and commentary that you've been putting in and the questions that have been really absolutely fantastic. I would genuinely like to thank Gregory, Alice, Ella, and of course Laurie for being a part of this today. Really, everybody, thank you ever so much for being a part of that. And Alex, thank you, mate. That's 3 in the series gone, and particularly interesting. So for all of us here, all the audience at home, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we will see you next year. But obviously, happy Christmas in the meantime. Thanks, everybody. Right, let me turn off this.